So here's a question for you. Are you an athlete that is looking ahead to next year and thinking, I want to take my performance to the next level? Or perhaps you're someone that really wants to improve your body composition. Or further still, are you someone that wants to build a platform of daily energy where you want to set yourself up for a high quality of life for the years ahead? If you're any one of those people, or perhaps all three, and then this is the show for you. Because I've welcomed back my guest. I would call him my master guest because he's been on the show so much now. Scott Tindal from Fuelin. Welcome, Scotty.
Matty,
Good
pleasure.
to see you again.
Thanks, mate.
Last week we had a nice chat about Kona and some broader perspectives on triathlon. Now we're going to expand our horizons a little bit, and I want to have some common advice as we start to enter into the end of the year. And most people are looking ahead. They're getting ready to commit to their New Year's resolutions and all of that stuff. But I want to get some general advice for you. And I'm going to go just very simply with 3 questions of what should we focus on if you're an athlete, if you're looking for body composition changes, if you're looking for improving your longevity and daily quality of life, and what you bring to your role or anything that's important to you. Very, very simple stuff, really practical guidance and advice. And I will say before we dive into this, we talked a lot in last week's show about fueling. We talked a lot about athletics, race fueling, some observations around Kona. If you guys missed that show, I really recommend you go back. It was a treasure trove of perspective and really interesting insights. Today, we're going to get a little bit more practical and really rip the meat off the bone, as it were. And I want to start with talking about the athlete first. And let's let most athletes at this phase of the year are in what we call off season. So it's far away in the horizon that their race goals and their start lines are there. Training demands are much lower. Specificity is actually probably lower so far as not really training race specificity right now. They're doing a lot of foundational work. So as a nutritionist, what would be your recommendation for athletes thinking about charting their journey for higher performance? What should they be focusing on right now in terms of eating, fueling, supporting training demands, hydration? How should an athlete think about it? Because most of them stop thinking about it.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And actually, probably for all 3 problems that you described at the start, my answer would probably be very similar, actually. But we can get into the nitty-gritty of that. I mean, firstly, I think reflect on what's happened in the season past.
Yeah.
With either yourself or with your coach or with your team around you and say, well, where did we do well? Where did we not go well? Take the Arnie Schwarzenegger approach. Cut your pants off at the knees so you can see your calves at every opportunity and say, well, this is my weakness. How am I going to develop that weakness to become a strength? And so, okay, you're that athlete who wants high performance. Where was the high performance missing? And where are you going to direct your efforts to? Maybe you weren't strong enough. Okay. So what does the big picture of the macro cycle of the next 12 months look like? What's the overarching goal for that? And that's, going to be a discussion. And then obviously specifically, how does nutrition fit with that? If you need to build muscle because you're a bit weaker, then your calorie intake is going to be really important. You have to be in a caloric surplus. You have to be manipulating your protein and certainly your carbohydrates around your training to maximize the impact of that.
So I just want to pause that because I think that's really important. If general weakness is an area to attack and you want to build strength, it's not just about going to the gym. It's not just about training. There is a nutritional component that are critical. You need to be in a surplus. I want to double underline that. So just explain what that is. And then when you say manipulating protein, what do you mean by that in a practical sense?
Yeah, I mean, and again, even from a training perspective, I would counter that and say it's not just about lifting weights. It's lifting weights with a purpose.
Yes.
It's with an intensity. It's with a focus. So, if you want to have hypertrophy, there's a certain rep range, there's a certain set range, there's a certain rest period that you need to be focusing on. And everyone's so worried, I'm going to get bulky. It's like, oh, come on. Even if you did get a bit bulky, is that going to be the worst thing for you at the start of the off season? Probably, every triathlete or endurance athlete throughout the year is most likely, as you highlighted last week, I've shrunk.
It's shrinking,
you will most likely either maintain your lean mass or probably potentially lose a little bit as the season goes on.
Yeah.
So don't be too paranoid about that. Look, in terms of structuring, overall calorie intake is probably the most important thing. Overall protein intake in terms of across the 24 hours and the weeks and the months is going to be super important. Same with carbohydrate intake. Positioning it around your training, yes, it's important. It's probably not the most important thing, not nearly as important as with endurance training. That's pretty clear from what we're seeing. The duration of the training sessions, for most lifting sessions, you're not going to need to eat anything during those
During
sessions.
the session, yeah.
Certainly taking in something before, thinking about that, not going in fasted. Again, it's not equivocal. It doesn't mean everyone will benefit from eating something going into training. However, the research supports, and certainly there's a correlation, if you do eat before a strength session, and this is certainly our philosophy at Fuelin, eat something before, don't go in fasted, more likely you'll push more weight and you'll do more repetitions.
Yeah.
What does that equate to? Probably better results.
Bigger gains.
Afterwards, making sure you're not, don't do intermittent fasting in and around strength training if you want to, again, increase strength and power.
Yep.
And size, because if you neglect your body of fuel, protein, fat, and carbohydrates, and obviously that's total calories, then you won't get the results you need. So I think having a plan around a plan, you've got your training plan, you should have a nutrition plan. And I think, again, I say this time and time again, I always laugh, off-season, pre-season, whatever you want to call it. Oh, I don't need a nutrition plan. Well, are you going to eat? Isn't it easier to not have to think about the way in which you're eating and just follow a plan, much like you would with a training plan? Surely that's just an easier way. We've got a lot going on in our lives. Reduce the guesswork, eliminate the decision paralysis. Just get on with it. What's the one thing I'll say, and I was talking to Jonathan, co-founder, about this, and I always go back to it. It's like everyone wants this sexy approach to like everything. And it's like, eat well, eat with purpose, train well, train with purpose, sleep well, sleep with purpose. Like
habit development.
It's just not that cool.
Yeah.
And it takes effort. You've got to be consistent with it to get the results. But when we see athletes do all those three things really well, you know what happens? They have great results.
They improve. Yeah, it's true. I want to broaden your horizon a little bit outside of. We went down the rabbit hole of strength and building muscle. About a year ago, we had a conversation. You said something really interesting for the athlete right now. You just talked about there's so much stuff to be thinking about in the middle of the season when an athlete is training for a race. In the midst, by the way, because most of our listeners are time-starved amateurs, of life carrying on. They have this looming deadline. Training is at its highest intensity. They have almost no time, and they're trying to crack the code of race fueling. We now remove that, training a little bit less, a little less specificity on the training, at least as far as the race specificity. It's a great time. A year ago, you talked about this is the time that you want to build the great platform of really high quality eating. Can you explain that concept a little bit? Like in off season, you want to get your daily eating dialed in when your caloric demands are a little bit lower. So just break that down, because I thought that was a real sort of unlock for many of our athletes last year. They're like, I see.
Yeah, I think a lot of athletes don't eat well. Well, a lot of people don't eat well. I think you've only got to look at the state of the world at the moment, whether it be the USA, Australia, or the UK, or globally. So I think, what does that mean? I think, again, bring it back into simple terms. Yeah, aiming 6 to 7, probably 6 to 9 serves of vegetables a day.
There you go. Tons of vegetables.
No one's doing it. No one's doing it. Look, I struggle to do it.
It's practically very challenging.
It is challenging. Yeah. Certainly can get to 6. Lunch and dinner.
Yep.
Can certainly just bulk out the plate with 6 serves of veggies. Breakfast, if it is a cooked breakfast, throwing in extra couple of handfuls of, this morning,
spinach,
a couple of handfuls of spinach, spring greens and whatnot. So That certainly increases fiber intake.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone talks about gut health. How do you improve gut health? It's not through probiotics. Even the research around probiotics is pretty scant these days
Yep.
in terms of showing clear evidence of effect. What seems to be showing effect is prebiotics. Prebiotics being fiber, certainly insoluble, soluble fiber, which the gut microbiome feeds on. That's what it thrives on. Where do you get fiber from? You get it from vegetables. Even the research on fiber, like inulin, found in all these products, is a little bit iffy.
Mm-hmm.
So powdered sort of fiber sources maybe don't do, even though they say fiber, maybe they're not doing exactly what real fiber
Is
does.
real
Like
fiber.
real food.
Yeah,
Like
that's the solution.
eat
Don't
food.
take a powder. Eat food.
Wow.
Tons of fiber.
Eat real food. Yeah.
So come to it. That's number one.
So
Fiber. Anyway.
fiber, fruit, vegetables. Two pieces of fruit a day. Don't be scared of fruit.
Yeah.
As I always say, no one got fat eating fruit. So
Much fruit, one of my favorite quotes as
Yeah.
well. So there's fruit. There's number one. Bedrock it off. Boil it down.
fruit and
Super
veggies.
simple.
Yeah, fruit and veggies, I think that's your mainstay. Now, that will provide great micronutrition.
Mm-hmm.
There is obviously some macronutrition within that in terms of carbohydrates. Certainly leafy greens and those types of vegetables aren't going to contain a lot of carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a layer on top. But you can still choose other vegetables.
Yep.
Potatoes, sweet potatoes, parsnips, root vegetables, beets.
Good.
Layer those on top based on what you require.
Okay.
Now, if you need more carbohydrates than that, again, choose sources. Whole wheat breads, good quality breads, sourdoughs, brown rices.
And a lot of that is dependent on your caloric expenditure for
Caloric
life
expenditure,
and
exactly.
training. Yeah.
And again, if you're thinking of that second athlete who is maybe trying to improve body composition, yes, calories matter.
Yep. We're going to get onto that. What about protein? Because what we're doing is laying the foundation. So we've got all these, we've got fibers, etc. Then you've got this throttling effect of, let's call it the more starchy carbohydrates. You want to choose good quality ones, and that's dependent. So that you want to think about that as a lever almost, where you or a throttle. You throttle up the carbs as your caloric expenditure comes. What about proteins and fats? People are very interested in that.
Yep. And even just before that, so visually, when you're looking at either your plate, is 3/4 of your plate filled with vegetables?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a good place to
That's a
start.
good place to
Or
start.
at least 2 to 3 fists of vegetables as well, if you whichever visualization you want. So I think that's a really good place to start. How much of my plate is filled with fruits and vegetables is a good place. Then protein. I think protein's a really good place to start, again, from a foundational perspective, because you might be on low calorie or lower calorie intake, again, to try and improve body composition, but you can still take in moderate to high amounts of protein, which is still part of that calorie puzzle. So, and doing that, not only you'll probably increase satiation, so your feelings of fullness, which prevents you hopefully snacking and then taking in extra calories, if that is again your goal. You are hopefully improving immune function by taking in higher amounts of protein, which is going to be essential because on a lower calorie intake, there is the potential for susceptibility to upper respiratory tract infections and whatnot if you're continuously in a caloric deficit as a result of maybe too much training and things. So, and again, male to female differences. Males may be a little bit more robust in terms of their ability to withstand that versus females. Again, not going to get into the weeds of why that is. It's just what we observe. Protein for building lean mass, essential. For retaining lean mass, essential. For bone health, essential. You hear tales of increased protein intake, it causes leaching of calcium from bones. Actually, that's not the truth. Look at the research. The research shows actually those individuals who take in more protein tend to have better bone mineral density. So again, from a habit perspective, taking in and plant protein, fine. The difference, again, it used to be, plant protein is inferior to animal protein. Actually, it's not really supported by the research these days. As long as you're getting the equivalent of total protein from plant sources as animal. Now, in order to
which is more of a challenge.
To get the plant protein means you've got to eat a hell of a lot more. And often with plant protein sources, well, what do they come with? They come with more fat and in particular, more carbohydrates, which now makes it difficult if you're trying to keep total calories down.
Yeah.
So that's where the plant diet becomes more of not a struggle, but more of a puzzle, and certainly requires more planning
Mm-hmm.
in order to do it well.
Yep.
Because you can be a plant-based athlete and eat terribly. You can eat margarita pizzas,
Yep.
you can eat Doritos, you can drink Coke, and you can eat all the white bread in the world.
Yep.
You're a vegan athlete.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You also eat like crap.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
again, foundational good quality food, whether you're plant-based or whether you're animal-based, thinking about the quality, thinking about then how does my calorie intake work with that, and then what am I trying to achieve?
So on a simple thing, you said a nice sort of visualization of 3/4 of the plate or 2/5
Yep.
of vegetables. Is there any algorithm or rule of thumb so far as just general people? What should they be consuming on a day-to-day basis with protein?
So hand of protein's a nice little sort of
A hand of
thinking full
protein
hand, and obviously,
in every meal that they consume,
yeah, I
breakfast,
think,
lunch, and dinner.
I mean, again, total size of the athlete now is
Yeah,
going to
of
play a
course.
role.
Yeah, but it's a good
What you weigh in pounds,
consuming
roughly
protein.
consuming protein in
Yeah.
grams per day. That's a nice little look. That's somewhere between 2 and 3 grams per kilo. Body weight.
Exactly. So I weigh just under 200 pounds. So therefore, I'm aiming like
Somewhere
150 to 200,
Oh, definitely
175.
above 150.
Yeah.
If you're, what do you say, you're 200 pounds?
100. Well, I wouldn't like to say that much. No, more like 193. But let's go towards
So
200.
190 to 210
Yeah.
is your range.
Okay.
Again, think of ranges. I think everyone's like, ooh, obviously
Yeah.
we give a target for someone. So
Yeah.
180 grams for me, 200 grams for you. It's a target. If you get either side of that 20 grams, let's call it 10%, you're
Yeah.
doing well. You're never going to nail exactly. And I think, again, like athletes, I get messages from some athletes, and obviously we work with a type A personality, I think, and with triathletes, and I missed it by 5 grams.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
dude, like, not only is tracking, like, there's going to be some degree of error in tracking, whether it's your visual, what you're doing from a weighing perspective, from the back of the label that isn't 100% accurate. Trends are important. So yes, hand of protein. The hand of protein should weigh roughly 200 grams, which is what, 7 ounces?
Yep.
Something like that. Thickness of a deck of cards.
There you go.
Something like that on your plate. Okay, give or take, depending on how big your hand is, maybe weigh it the first time, chicken breast, one. But again, visualizing on your plate. So big piece of protein, plant or animal, lots of veggies, some fruit on there, starchy carbs are layered in based on what you need.